Hello everyone, I am Chef Himraj Patil working at AISSMS College of Hotel Management and Catering Technology. I am going to discuss about bread faults. This topic is divided into three parts. Objectives are to discuss various types of bread faults and to understand causes of bread faults. After spending so much of time on bread making, if final product does not turn out as expected, then we get upset. Then we start thinking what went wrong. Technically, we will be discussing reasons rather causes which makes our bread ugly. So let's begin with the types of bread faults. There are four types of bread faults pertaining to the breads. Those are shape faults, flavor faults, texture and crumb faults, and crust faults. Let's discuss in detail which are these various types of faults and what are their causes. So to start with the shape faults, the first shape fault is a poor volume. Why does not our bread rise properly? What are the causes of that one that we are going to discuss in this slide? So the first cause for poor volume is too much salt is used. So the salt retards the growth of the yeast, and since the yeast is not developed, the more gases are not formed, and because of that your bread does not rise. The second cause is too little yeast. If the yeast is not enough, then the generation of the gases would be less. That's why bread does not rise. Third one is too little liquid. If there is not enough liquid for used for making the bread, then the bread dough would be stiff. And the second reason is that either there is less liquid in the bread, then the less steam would be formed. While during the baking, this is the liquid which converts into the steam and that helps to rise the bread. Next is a weak flour. Basically, for making the breads, you must use bread flour, or that also is called the strong flour, because the weak flour contains less gluten. And if there is a less gluten in the dough, then that would not stop the steam or the gases to escape from the dough. So gluten plays a very important role. If there is enough gluten strands would be formed, and that holds all the gases and the steam in the bread. So these are basically are the ingredient fault. If you do not accurately weigh your ingredients, then it will have a very adverse effect on the bread. The next fault is related to a mixing. If you do not mix the dough properly, if it is under or over mixed, that also is going to have a effect on your bread. Underproofing means the less gluten is developed. If the less gluten is developed, that is not going to hold the gases. And if the gluten is developed too much in the dough, that will will not allow the bread to expand. The last one is oven too hot. When you put the bread in the oven and if the temperature is too high, immediately the crust is going to form and your bread will not rise after that. If you put at the right temperature, slowly the crust and the gases uh, formation and the expansion, it happens simultaneously. By the crust is formed, your bread is already raised enough. But instead of that, if you put in a very hot oven, then the crust would be formed and your bread is not going to rise. So the next fault is too much volume. So it is very contrast to poor volume. The causes are totally opposite to whatever we discussed in a previous slide. Okay, the first cause for too much of volume is too little salt. So salt helps to control the growth of the yeast. So these are the two roles of the yeast. It controls, if added in enough quantity, then it controls the growth of the yeast, and if too much is added, then it is going to hinder the growth of the yeast. Okay, if it is in the right quantity, it is desirable. If it is too much also, it will have a adverse effect. And if you add too less also, then there will be no control on the yeast and they multiply very fast and the volume is increased drastically. Second, too much yeast. Too much yeast means too much of the gases are generated, and too much gases means it is going to uh, rise a product very rapidly. Third, too much dough scaled. Here, like if you want to make a sandwich bread, and in that mold, if 700-gram dough is required, instead of that, if you put a 750-gram of the dough, 50-gram extra, you know what is going to happen exactly. It will come out of the mold, right? So you need to take exactly what your quantity of dough is required. The last one is overproofing, right? So if the dough is overproofed also, then it will rise the dough undesirably more. So the third shape fault is a poor shape. So in the picture also you can see it is a very irregular shape. The reasons for this one are too much liquid. If the dough is very slack, in that case it is not going to hold a shape. Next, flour too weak. We have already discussed, if there is not enough gluten in the dough, it will not rise or it will not get a desirable shape also. Next, improper mold or makeup. So you when we put a dough in a mold or when with the and when we give a shape, generally first step in that is we knock back the dough, we remove all the gases, and then only we give a shape. So when doing that, you need to make sure that it is done properly. If it is made manually, then the dough should be very tight, and if you are putting in the mold also, then evenly it should be added and pressed properly. Next cause is improper fermentation or proofing. So in the previous videos you can see that I have made a video on a 12 stages of bread making. In that video I have explained what is a fermentation, what is the difference between the fermentation and the proofing. So fermentation is a stage after once the dough is formed, we keep that one for some time. That is basically is a fermentation. So if the dough is not kept for enough time for fermentation, and after makeup, if the dough is not rested for enough time, also it will have a adverse effect on the shape of the bread. The last one is too much oven steam. If the too much oven steam is formed, then the crust will take more time to form, and then the shape of the bread would not be as desirable. These are the references used for preparing this video. Kindly watch part 2 of this chapter. Thank you.